The problem that we are going to deal with today is create an address book program using shell script using bash shell, which should use functions to perform required tasks. It should be menu based, allowing you option to search address book, add entries in it, remove or edit the entries, and we'll also need to display function in order to display the records properly. So let us first create our shell script. So I'm creating touch address book dot sh, where sh is shell where sh stands for shell script file. Now what is a shell? That would be a question that you might have. So the external application is the outermost layer, then comes the shell, then comes Linux kernel, and then the hardware. So shell is basically a command line interpreter that provides UI for Unix or Linux OS. It allows user to interact with the system by using the commands. So here the touch file, touch and then the file name allows us to create an empty file named as addressbook.sh. Then let us open this file using nano addressbook.sh. Nano is used to open the file. First we'll provide a header, hash exclamation bin slash bash. Here we'll have another slash, that is forward slash. Okay, so this tells the interpreter that this is a shell script file. So we are here to create a menu based program. So first we'll have to design our menu. In the menu we'll have to print the options. So here, in order to print the option, I'll use the command echo. Echo is used to print the entire line that we are writing on the terminal. Now here E is used for enable, that is it can read \n\t. Otherwise, if you don't use E, it considers \n or \t as normal characters. Now we'll create the menu. So first thing is we're giving options. So we are going to press 1 in order to search, then 2 in order to add entries, add or insert entries, 3 in order to remove entries, 4 in order to display, and maybe 4 in order to edit, because we have remove and edit, so we'll create an extra one, and then 5 in order to display. So here we have this, and we have to read the choice that the user is entering into a variable. So we are using a variable named as choice. So if the user gives 1 as input, so that gets stored in the variable choice, which we are reading. Now to use the case, we'll type the keyword case and then dollar in order to use the variable choice. In is for giving the choice. Now 1, we have written 1 here, so this is the very first choice that that user is entering. That is, user gives 1 as input, then whatever is the program, here is your line of code that is enclosed between that is enclosed in this portion, is basically executed. So first I'll implement the portion for invalid input. So if the input is invalid, then I'll print on the terminal as invalid input. Now we have to end this using 2 semicolons. So first we'll implement the display function, where we are displaying the content of the file. So I'll name the function as display itself, and here to end case I'll have to reverse the word case. So ESAC will be the ending of case. We'll implement these one by one. So what is the structure of our address book? So the structure of our address book will be employee ID, then the name, this will be colon separated, name, then we'll have the address. So first thing is that we'll define a file name, a variable named as file name, and without giving a space I'll put a equal to and then quotes and then give the name of the file, addressbook.txt file. Now first thing I have to check, this is global declaration, I have to check if the file does not exist, then I'll create the file. Now why I am putting the file name, that variable, in quotes, double quotes, the reason is that the file name can be address space book.txt, and then in that case the code should not fail, so therefore it is important to put it in double quotes. Now if the file does not exist, we have to create the file. So I'm using the touch command to create the file with file name, and then echo, what we have to do is I'll give it a header, employee ID, then the name, which is followed by address, and this content has to be sent to the file. So here is the file name. So I'll close this if by writing fi. The if block is sorted. Now what we have to do next is, this is that we have created a file if it does not exist. So here I don't have a file name, addressbook.sh is the shell file, but I don't have a file named as addressbook.txt, so this will create the file. Now I'll implement the display function. The hash is used for comments. So display function, in display function I'll check if the file exists or not. If file exists, so if my file is present, then what I have to do is I have to display its content. Then I have to echo first content of address book is, content of address book is, and then I am entering the content, that is using cat, that is used to display the entire content of a file, cat, then I am giving the name of the file in quotes. If it does not exist, then I'll have a else block where I'm displaying or showing on the terminal that file does not exist. So I have made it clear that if file is existing, then only I'm going to display the content. So in order to save it, I'll do Ctrl+O to write out, then enter, then Ctrl X to run it. Bash addressbook.sh. In Linux we can do /, that is the / addressbook.sh. This shows all the options. I'm clicking on 5th. So content of address book is this. Basically a file named addressbook.txt is created with this as the content. If you notice, the pointer is now at line 2. Now let's implement the further part using nano addressbook.sh. Now we have implemented one function, that is display function. What we have to do next is adding an entry, that is insert. It's not compulsory to do things in the same order as mentioned in the problem statement. We can choose our own order to do it, but then I'll choose the order that makes it relatively easy. So in order to insert in the file, again I'll have to check if file exists or not. So this statement returns a true if file is existing, else it returns a false. So now the file is existing, so I'll echo what I need to take. So I have to take employee ID. So echo enter employee ID. We'll read the employee ID in a variable named as employee ID. Then I'll print and prompt the user to enter the name of the employee. then I'll read the name, then I'll ask the user to enter the address, and then I'll read the address of the employee. Now what we have to do is insert it in the file. So in order to insert a single record in a file, we'll do echo in quotes, we'll use the variables. The very first variable we are going to use is employee ID. Then we'll have a semicolon. As per the suggested record formats, to use semicolons or colons to separate it. We can even have a colon spaced. So here we can even have colon based, just change semicolons with colons and that would work. Okay, so I'm using semicolons for now. Then I have to enter name as per the format, and then I need address. So this content I have to move in the file. Now I'm giving the name of the file name. This inserts the record in the file, and I can echo record inserted successfully. So this prints that the record is inserted. Now let us add insert at its place. So in choice, we'll have to give in our menu the second option as in calling the insert function. Here I'll just remove the extra spaces if there are any. Okay, so Control O to save, enter, Control X to exit. We have an unexpected token. Let us check where the error is. The function that we have written is we didn't end if. Okay, so we need to end if first. So here we'll write the else block. Echo file doesn't exist, and then I'll do fi to end the if block. Write out, enter, Control X. Okay, so insert. Employee ID is set 23, name is XYZ, and address is say 342 by 3 and some place maybe Pune. Record inserted. So I'll go to addressbook.txt and I can see that the record is inserted. So now let us move ahead. The next thing we can do is search address book. So when we understand, let us try before this how to search in an address book. So here I'll show you. I'm using grep and then I'm writing grep and searching for XYZ in address book.txt. So it prints that particular line where XYZ is present. Now say I want another thing that I don't want to print, that is I want the opposite. I have to print all those lines where XYZ is not present. So we use B here. Now it prints the line that does not contains XYZ. Here even if we have a third record, it will display the third record also. Let us insert a third record and then verify this. So I'm inserting 45 as the employee ID, name as ABC, and I'm putting address as XY 4x4y something. I'm entering a random address. So once the record is entered, we'll check with this. So now I'm being returned 2 records which does not match XYZ. grep is used to search in a file for patterns that are similar to the text we are mentioning here. But if we have here as a extra entity dash and then v, then it will search for all those lines that does not match xyz. Now with this knowledge, we'll amend our address book.sh file. So coming back to our problem statement, we have to search an address book. So I'm going to write the function of search. So if we are searching in an address book, what will we search on? That is the very first question. So we can search it on employee ID, we can search it based on address, we can search it based on name. For this case, I'll be taking employee ID as the field to search on. In order to search based on employee ID, again I'll check if the file exists or not. So now you will be, by this time you will be familiar with this syntax. If file exists, then we are going to search, otherwise we are not going to search. So then echo, I'm prompting the user to enter the employee ID. And I'm reading the employee ID and storing it in a variable. Once done with this, I have to search. Now how to search? If grep q, that is, do it quietly, don't print the output. Now this statement, why didn't we use these square brackets here? These square brackets are used in cases where we are checking for truthness or falseness of a situation, where we are checking equality, maybe some things are equal or not, but here we are checking if a line exists or not. So here we will not be using those brackets. So grep quietly, that is, we are going to output we are not going to display a output on the terminal as we did in the previous case while searching for xyz. So this upward arrow mark here is there to suggest that we'll be searching in the start of the line, then dollar, then employee ID. This is our variable, the variable we are searching for, and then a colon. We are searching for this pattern in what we are searching for this pattern in our file. So we'll enter the name of the file, the variable basically here. Okay, so if this is satisfying, then what we have to do is we have to echo record found. Okay, and if I want to print the record by any chance, then I'll remove quietly and then I'll print the record after removing the q from there. So it's the same line, the above same line that I'm writing here, just the only difference being I have removed quietly from there. Else block is record not found. So here if we don't find any line, we are returned an empty buffer here. So then I'm going to say that record not found, such an employee does not exist, and we are going to end this if block. For the upper if block, we'll need a else. We'll say file not found, that is, file does not exist. Okay, and we'll end the if block and the function. So our function name is search, and here we'll cross check with the case the search is first. So we'll add the function here also so that we can access it. Done. Control O, enter, Control X. Now bash first option, employee ID, I'm giving 23. So this is the record that is found by it. Here 23 is the ID. Did I press escape key here? Pressed escape key by mistake. Okay, So the record found is this. Now let me just check once again with some other record. Say I am checking it with in search with 45. So there is a record with this also. Now if I say I'm checking a record with employee ID 46, that does not exist there, so it will show record not found. 46 does not exist. Say I add 46 here myself, say NYC something name and a few keys here and there. Suppose I have added this and I'm now checking for it. 46, it will show record found because now in addressbook.txt I've added a new entry. Okay, so coming back to our problem statement, what we are left with is remove and edit entries. So the code for these both is quite similar. We'll do it one by one. The very first thing that we are going to implement is remove or delete. So delete function, first we'll check if file exists or not, as the usual thing, but you have to do this for safety, otherwise your code might crash if the file does not exist. So if file exists, then what we have to do is we have to remove the file, we have to delete the file. So delete a particular entity in the file. Say I want to delete a particular record, I have by mistakenly entered this 46 record and I want to delete it. So for that we'll be using this function instead of using it for deleting a particular file. So I am asking the user to enter employee ID of the employee whom I want to delete. It's similar to primary key, like I am asking the user to enter a key or a word based on which I can search the records and delete accordingly. So now in order to delete, indeed I'll have to search, right? So I'll use grep and quietly it will search for employee ID that I'm entering in the file name. Okay, so if this condition is satisfied, then I have to remove the content of the file. Now how do I remove the content? So let us discuss on this. The very first thing I can do is I can select the line of this address book. Say I have entered 46, so I'll select this line and I'll delete it. Say this is the record 23, I don't want it, I'll select the line, I'll delete it. But if I'm OS, then how will I do it? So what is being done is any line that does not match this 23 is taken, a separate file is created, the other lines which do not match the record of 23 are copied to that file, then that file is renamed as this file and this file is then deleted. So the same process we are going to mimic here. We'll do grep v. V is for taking everything that does not match. So grep v employee ID. Okay, so we are checking for all records that do not match, and all these records are being shifted to a file. Now for multiple records there is a single one here, temp.txt. Notice this, for multiple records and for a single record, in the insert function we used 2 arrows here. Now we have to change it to temp.txt. But if this is done, then we have now what this portion of the code has done is it is copying all the content that does not match a particular pattern that we are giving as input to temp.txt file. But this is not the purpose, right? We need to rename that file as address book. We need to delete that record from address book. The record has not yet been deleted from the address book, so we'll do and. What this and means is, if the first operation is successful, then it will go for implementation of the second operation. So what we are going to do is we'll use move temp.txt and then we'll give our file name. So technically it is going to rename, move old file and then new file. So it renames old file to new file. Then we can echo, if this works successfully, we can echo record deleted successfully. This deletes the record successfully. Else what we have to do, we can say failed, record not found. Record not found will end this if, and then we'll give a else block here for the upper if, and we'll echo file not found and then end it. So the function is named as delete and we are done with the code of the function. Adding it to the menu as the third option. Third option is delete. Okay, saving it, Control O, enter, Control X, and we'll run it. So I'm using third option and I'm entering say 46. So the record gets deleted. Now let us say I'm deleting a record from the middle. Let me just insert another record, a few more records, and insert another. Okay, so we have inserted a few records. Now let me delete a record from the middle. Remove record and say I'm removing 78. Now 78 gets deleted. So this is how we have implemented deleting a record. The last part which is left is editing, that is modifying. Let us implement the code for that. We'll open our script using nano and we'll create a function to edit. Let us name it as edit itself. So edit is our function, and in edit, first thing that we have to check is if our file exists or not. If file name is existing, what we have to do is we can check the record that we have to edit. So first thing is I'll ask the user to enter the employee ID. With the employee ID, I'll read the employee ID, and with this employee ID I'll check that if this employee ID is present in my records, then I'll modify it. Basically what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to delete, use the same process as delete. I'll remove all these files, I'll keep the employee ID, I'll delete that particular line. Say this is 45, so I'll delete this particular record from the table in modify, and then the rest of the records will remain as it is, same process as delete, and then we are going to add another record in the end with employee ID as 45 and modified name and modified address. So how will we do this? Let us look at the code. The very first thing is we are using if grep q, that is do not write the output on the terminal, and we are searching for employee ID in file name. So if we get a positive output, then what we have to do is we have to ask the user for new employee new name, enter new name. I'll store that in a variable named as name. Then I'll ask the user to enter new address for that employee, and again I'll store that into a variable named as address. Once I'm done with this, what I'm left with is deleting all the records, is removing all the records that match this particular pattern. So in order to remove that records, what I have to do is I'll copy the records that do not match the pattern into a separate file. So here I'm taking employee ID and then the file name. So basically we are checking for records that do not match and save them in temp.txt. Now what we have to do is we have to rename the file, that is old file name is temp.txt, and rename it as the file name that we have given. So this is done. Once this is successful, I need to enter the record in the file, that is I need to add the employee with that ID in the file. So I'm removing this. So what I'm initially doing is I'm taking employee ID 45 from the user as input. Once the user has given me 45 as input, I'm checking if a record with this name exists, this employee ID exists. So once I find the record, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take new name and new address from user as input. So then what I'm doing is I'm removing this record, or I'm leaving this record and adding all the other records that do not match the pattern to a separate file, which I'm naming as temp.txt, and then I'm renaming temp.txt as the addressbook.txt, thus overwriting this. So now once I'm done with overwriting, so this records get deleted. What we are left with is we have to enter a new entity, a new record that has 45 as the employee ID, the new name as the name, and the new address as the address, and this will be added at the end here. So employee ID, then name is a variable, so it will need a $sign in front of it, and then the address. Once this is done, we need to add it to the file. This is $file name. Once this is done, I'll say echo record modified successfully. Record modified successfully, and then end the if block. For this I'll have a else block, and I'll write here echo file not found, and end this also if, and here I'll close. Here we can have an else block also for this if, the inner one. Wait. So basically else block can be like, the else block can be like, we are saying that the record itself is not found, record not found. So we are done with this code, and this function name is edit. So we'll add this function here in our menu. This will be the fourth option, edit function, Control O, enter, Control X, bash. So edit. I am editing the 23rd record. I'm giving XYZ name and some address. Okay, maybe a few numbers, a few keys here and there record modified. Now if you can observe, the in the previous case, here at the second position we had this record with employee ID 23, but now it is at the bottom. So we have successfully implemented everything that was given in the problem statement. That's all from my side. Thank you.